Imagine a sand apocalypse, when everything around is buried beneath endless sand dunes. Enormous monsters lurk beneath the surface, and people fight over the last bits of supplies. And in this ruined sand world, there's just one boy who can control all the sand around him. Can you imagine what he's capable of? The entire world is in his hands, and his potential is infinite. So here's how it all began. 100 years ago, a beam of light struck Earth and destroyed everything on the planet, converting the blue giant into one full of sand. What little was remained of humanity established a fortress Zeon. Our protagonist is a sad farmer, caught up in the middle of a few bastards who found joy in killing others. But our dude ain't no bitch, because he reacted back in kind, recalling how he never really killed a person. He had a tiny accident in which one guy tried to steal his goods and ended up accidentally dying. The world has awakeners who are treated as dods. The thought that he had slain someone who had a connection to Li Ji Rui Ong, someone who was woken, horrified him. This same monster stayed unharmed by the kid's strike and threw him aside, utilizing his awakened powers to teach the rodent a lesson. Fortunately, an accident caused the vehicle to roll over, wounding this guy in the process. The driver, at the edge of his life, shared that they're being gobbled whole by a Godzilla-sized sandworm. Zeon had to clutch for his life, knowing that his time had come since he was a weakling, that if he just was stronger, things would be different. The sandworm devoured him. However, the child actually didn't die, suddenly finding himself alive in the creature's insides. This individual resolved to become the next Paul Atreides since he witnessed everything. The ruined structures of humanity all came pouring to his senses, revealing him what happened of their magnificent planet. At that instant, he awakened his first power for the first time, an automatically chanted sandblaster, piercing a shot directly through the creature's side. Now that he possessed the power in the world to live, Zeon dared against his chances that he would use the sand to survive against the impossible. Zeon can feel every tiny beat of his heart. It's as if his body has charged with immense vigor. Understanding that this is the process of awakening, he clenches his fist. Meanwhile, we get this bizarre scene of the sandworm from Dune poised to consume the young human. The thing reaches to consume him whole, as Zeon stands there with balls of titanium, refusing to stand aside. Shockingly, some dude quickly intrudes to save his life, expressing that the kid is in his face. The dude throws Zeon flying into the air, sending him to hit the ground with a hard crash. My guy spits out sand and queries how the hell this random gentleman managed to step him like Minato Namikaze out of the blue. But the moment he glances back up again, bro is scared to observe that this guy plunged a blade into the sandworm's neck, blasting out tar-like blood out of its body. The man taunts the monster for making him climb up so high, wondering if he should send it all the way back down. Preparing his move, he decides to drive his kick straight into the blade, forcing the monster all the way to its death. Our boy is startled to his wits. The fact that someone as powerful as this random guy managed to knock out this sandworm is no simple task. It's actually Zeon's first meeting with the sandworm, and before he could even comprehend his emotions, a blue-haired cute baddie rushes up to him and exposes that it's Captain John Youngbeam, being flamboyant as always. Again, Zeon has absolutely no idea how the hell these people are stepping him like that. It's like they're bursting out of thin air, while the chick is busy applauding her awesome captain's skills. One look at her figure is enough to make him realize that this woman is extremely powerful, but even more so, the boy is bewildered why his body has started to freeze up. Young Bayam comments that a sandworm isn't even a tough opponent for him. Then he addresses Giselle before looking to his side. The captain turns back to find these two mixing around. Giselle is fun and obedient to her commander, but she's having a heck of a time dragging Zeon around like a ragdoll. In a second, she overpowers my guy and pins him down, and I guess a lot of us would love to exchange spots with this dude right now. Giselle playfully guesses the guy's rank and abilities, pondering what approach she should apply to find out. But just then, she discovers something peculiar. The peculiarity is that Zeon is actually not an awakener at all. Pinned like that, our boy can't even believe what she's saying right now. Giselle continues to destroy his arm while telling the captain how the youngster doesn't have a rank insignia at all. Zeon is baffled, even considering that this chick might be blind because every awakener is intended to have an insignia. Watching the spectacle from the car, another colleague hollers at them to just hurry up already. Giselle requests for feedback from the captain, emphasizing how it's going to be awkward if they just leave this person over here to die. I mean, our boy has issues of his own, because isn't this the same chick who nearly broke his arm just now? Young Bam stares down at the boy, meeting eye to eye, before telling Giselle to dump the kid at the back since he seemed to be headed to the mine. And thus, in the next scene, we have our busted little car filled with a raucous gang. Young Bayam's team isn't exactly the most calm kind. They're making a ton of commotion. Meanwhile, our boy gets pushed to the rear and tied up like he's some kind of luggage. He listens to their chats till sand slides inside the vehicle. In truth, it's actually Zeon manipulating the movement of the sand itself, confirming that he has definitely awoken his powers. At the same time, he doesn't understand why no one can see his rank insignia, and taking one look at it, he finds the mark unusual too. The color looks orange, but it actually matches the same color of the beach. The lighted light of a mark always shows the classification of the awakener. In other words, magic types normally have blue classification, combat manics have red orientation, and though there has been knowledge about other kinds of awakeners, it's the first time Zeon has ever heard about somebody being able to manipulate sand. Even as he does so right now effortlessly, it's one of a kind. Unfortunately, he also knows that it's an F rank. But the good thing is that he has endless potential, allowing him to adapt like the desert. Our boy is pleased with what he's got, hoping to hide his talents until the time is right. Because someday, this man will be able to rule the whole of the desert according to his desire, and by extension, even dominate the earth, which is making me wonder if bro's a hero or villain at this point. Anyway, we arrive at the magnificent magic crystal mine. Zeon notices a checkpoint and mutters how things appear normal. One guy instructs him to follow him around without barking anything, so the kid has no choice but to accept his lead. Watching the scene from a distance, Giselle and Youngbum emphasize how uncomfortable they feel about this kid. The fact that he's the only survivor can be laid down to luck, only the captain rejects this idea firmly. You know, back then, as he was gazing about, he spotted the sandworm's gaping hole from one side of its body, signifying this youngster is definitely implicated. It's a shame for Youngbum to not even inquire for the boy's name, because he thinks they're destined to meet paths once more. In the next scene, we get a bit of a twist. You see, the normal mines are meant to be full of tunnels, but here people are buzzing around and enjoying festivities. Zeon did not anticipate such an outcome, as the guy handling him taunts him that he's going to contact the supervisor shortly, so the youngster better stay put. Our boy isn't exactly happy that he's being left all to himself in a situation like this, while the guy contemplates if he should favor him by adding a bullet to his head. He leaves bickering about, allowing the youngster to do whatever he wants, thinking it won't matter anyway. That argument aside, Zeon recognizes that he needs to eat something since he's so hungry. He searches about, seeking a shop to meet his demands. At that moment, Zeon observes a banner on the wall, urging for the laborers to light up the city. The merchant delivers him a drink and asks if it's an inspirational movement. The man's hands are rough with scars covered all over, showing how the real energy source of the city isn't mana stones. Zeon, who isn't sure where this conversation is leading, asks for the genuine energy source. Pointing towards the youngster, he adds that people like him, people like Zeon, are actually the genuine energy source. They're always directed to do whatever, and there are always replacements to cover the gap too, so it's truly a fantastic and infinite energy source. Our boy is angry that this dude is already roasting the heck out of him at their first encounter, yelling back that the old geezer should worry about his numbered days on the world. The old man ushers the boy to understand that at his age, everything seems interesting. Also, he somehow knows of Zeon's plunge into the sandworm's body, which stuns the child even more. The old geezer continues to berate him, expressing how a kid like him is going to finish up in a sandworm's belly soon anyway, as this isn't a spot for some kid to hide. Zeon defends himself that he's only here to earn money, but this boomer points to the back, in the hopes of enlightening the child with something eye-opening. What's at the back? Just a bunch of junk? Zeon doesn't see the purpose, so the vendor explains that he collected all that stuff one by one, and then he drops the bombshell. They're essentially the remains of all the individuals who came here before, who confronted the same reality the kid is going to meet. Everyone here tries to avoid the temptation of heading into the mines, but that's just how tempting mana stones are. Afraid of the worst death imaginable, these novices strive to sell everything just to survive, clutching onto dear life as they sell off bits of their souls. But in the end, none of this matters. Nothing gets better for them, and any possessions they gain just end up sliding away. All of them meet the same death. Therefore, he's now found it easier to explicitly tell these folks that the mine will consume them. This monster has the guts to declare that rodents like Zeon and the ones who came before him won't even leave a name behind, and that he's glad to see the remnants of the boy after his death. Ignoring his outburst with annoyance, he asks for the fee. The old geezer begs for an amount so ludicrous that Zeon shouts at him for it. Apparently, every resource in here costs a hefty price. Even the skewer he ate earlier is no different. Zeon talks down on the quality of the meat, before disclosing that he doesn't even have the type of money he's asking for. While he's rationalizing and defending himself on how they're attempting to loot him, he doesn't comprehend that all the other butchers and workers in the neighborhood are bringing out weapons to cut him down. Yes, they're that merciless. Zeon goes on and on about how he won't pay a single penny, only for one bastard to come around and flank him from behind. The fear of death overwhelms our boy for one instant as the old man throws a riddle to the kid, asking him how an elderly man like him even operates a company in an area so awful. It's because the answer is, they're all corrupt. Zeon looks back to discover that he is faced by more than a dozen guys, all lined up to chop his corpse to shreds. Acting like some kind of mafia boss, the old man amusingly asks what this youngster is going to do next. Zeon roars that he doesn't have anything to contribute, that it's pointless to ask for this type of money for a drink. Maintaining the advantage in the bargaining, he joyfully recommends a solution, looking down Zeon's mana stone in his pocket, figuring that it's a fitting return. Our boy is worried how all the tales about his activities have spread like an eagle, while the thug continues to urge him to toss the stone over, that he'll even pitch a fair price. Zeon slams a forceful refuse, saying that he had to endure hell and back only to grab this stone. He wants to hash things out with the old geezer, but it's evident that his words don't mean anything, since right in the next moment, a muscle freak grabs his head and knocks it down the table, even suggesting that they bury the brat. Pissed off, Zeon triggers a sandblaster, and bang goes this guy's arm soaring in the air. That's what you get for messing with the wrong guy. The identical arm lands in the hands of the other men who were ready to kill Zeon, refusing to negotiate anything with words. Zeon deploys spikes of sand, murdering every corrupt individual in the zone. Well, that's what he imagined was going to happen in his head at least. Because that amazing action sequence doesn't happen in the real thing. Instead, we have Zeon bleeding from his nose and zoning out, bemoaning his fate. In the end, Bro had to toss the stone over to the old geezer, giving him everything that he desired from this agreement. The old man is astounded at the tremendous size of this monster, suggesting that it's around 100 sol. Again, it's a crazy price, because Zeon fires back saying it's at least 300 from its size. The old geezer has all the advantage, so he talks down on the boy once more, berating him for not becoming sandworm dung instead of coming here. Another table slam later, Zeon is at his limit and intends to blast his powers out of here. But even now, he understands that he's not strong enough to achieve anything. Zeon requests for a suitable bonus in exchange for the stone. The old crooked geezer is fine with doing that, but he does urge him to beware of pickpocketers who are fast to steal anything. He plays it nice, and advises that the kid can pick anything from the mound of garbage. Rummaging around, our boy doesn't really uncover anything useful. And while he's sulking, the old man is captivated with his behavior. The fact that the kid refuses to lose a single cent, this kind of pettiness is uncommon in a zone like this. Zeon plays around with rubbish clown outfits, but then he discovers something remarkable, something that even the boss notices as an interesting piece. Our boy picks on this tiny hourglass for his bonus, and when he's leaving, the supervisor insults him once again for being selective with trash. Before heading away, Zeon asks for the elderly man's name, who shouts loudly that he's Klexi. Our boy burns that name fresh in his memory, hoping that their paths never meet again, implying a direct threat. Klexi doesn't encounter any fear and returns to his side. In the next image, the kid is busy checking the hourglass equipment. Zeon discovers that it takes roughly 10 minutes for the measurement to run out. He's currently staying in his quarters, and in order to test his talents, our boy takes a deep breath. Then he focuses all his attention on the tube, directing the sand within to move at once. To his horror, nothing actually happens. Bro humiliates himself by staring at the empty reflection, bewildered that his powers aren't genuinely tied to awakening. His whole skill is a mystery, as he's never seen anyone use it before. But strangely enough, Zeon is receiving peculiar vibes from the junkyard. This hourglass neatly sitting there makes him imagine it was purposefully placed there, as if it was calling out to him with a new feeling. Before Bro could realize his sentiments, an imbecile kicks the door down, questioning if he's the new youngster that was brought here. Immediately, Zeon is cursed at and berated even more for not being at the mine earlier. Back, Manhwa doesn't give no shits. Zeon tries to put respect on his own name by begging the dude to treat him kindly, only to get uppercutted square to the face and catapulted to Kingdom Come. Manhwa gears up a second punch, thrusting it deep inside the kid's abdomen, commanding him to shut the hell up. But that's not all. Zeon also gets trampled on like he's a piece of human meat, just because he insulted this brute's ego. Manhwa labels him an unawakened loser who's got attitude issues, that guys like him are meant to lay low and eat a beating to preserve their life. After feeling happy beating a boy up, he instructs Zeon to rapidly start pursuing him. Our boy gets up without chickening out. The first thing Bro says is that he's a psychopath, and that no matter what happens, Zeon will kill Manhwa eventually. I love how Bro's collecting a hit list out here that he's going to utilize to take everyone out. In the third sector of the mine entrance, Zeon is carried to the main working side and quickly suited up. Food and gear prices are notified in advance to be removed from his salary, and that the main purpose is to collect mana stones. At first, our boy thinks it's an easy assignment, but before he could shoot another question, his helmet is bashed open with Manhwa's pickaxe. This guy makes it obvious that he won't care if the youngster doesn't know how to swing a pickaxe, and that he'll also dock the payment for the helmet costs. Manhwa then tells the subordinate to toss Zeon into shaft number 972, which is said to be one of the worst places imaginable. Zeon doesn't really give a damn anymore and simply obeys orders, while his asshole manager adds that if he doesn't return with a mana stone, he'll be executed on the spot. Talk about having the worst job ever. Here, in this hellscape of a mine, even the kid's subordinate admits that this is the worst spot imaginable. It doesn't help that Zeon joined on the day Manhwa lost his money gambling, which surprises our boy that even a casino exists near the neighborhood. His pal over here says that everything's available, no different from Neo Soul for that matter. Zeon says that with morons like this awful management, it's sure for enterprises like this to meet at least some promise. Our guy also doesn't know if he's going to be alright swinging a pickaxe due of his smooth skin, making it bruise easy. However, his new acquaintance tells him that there won't be any trouble being harmed down there. Because you see, not even a single person in the tunnel has gotten wounded. Not even one. It's an unsettling warning, but finally they arrive to the specified tunnel. Our boy queries if he merely needs to farm the mana crystals and return, but then the guy swiftly cuts him off, claiming that he actually won't be returning. After all, more than a dozen people have vanished just being here. 4 are betting on saving his life exactly this moment too. No one even knows if the rest of them died, but all this homeboy has to offer is an apology and his thanks for venturing in a region so hazardous that no human could touch. Zeon shouts at him, recognizing that all the others are dead. He wants the answers, but this guy basically leaves him behind to die. His arrogance doesn't shake him. It inspires our boy to mine the snot out of this location, outraged off that they placed him here to die merely because of their wrath. Unfortunately, even with the first swing, the pickaxe crumbles and slips out of his hand, bouncing all the way to the opposite side. Helplessly, Zeon attempts to reach out for it, while at the same time wondering what kind of hellscape is he ever expected to endure. He was angry earlier so he couldn't notice, but the mana in this area of the tunnel is exceedingly dense, making him question whether the others could never sense it because they weren't awakened individuals. The density is so thick that it overwhelms him the deeper he goes, which also indicates that a normal human would face mana oversaturation by now. Not knowing where the source of mana is coming from, Zeon discovers his pickaxe, which appears to be broken from the handle. He's just glad to find it. And exactly as he's feeling grateful for his fate, my buddy steps on an actual blank, frightening his eyeballs out. The abyss drags him under, shocking Zeon with the abrupt emergence of a doorway. His helmet snapped to the side, exactly next to the shattered pickaxe also. This actually puts us into a flashback sequence of the boy's past, who lived a wretched life. All the people around him told him he was gonna die. The tiny kid had to battle tooth and nail just to make amends, and was thrashed multiple times, all because he wanted the fundamental luxury of eating healthily. Every time he had a dream, others destroyed it for him, and in the end he even managed to kill someone, consumed by the feelings of both terror and shame, thinking that his life was going to be over now. The child ran as fast as he could to go to a kind of life where he didn't need to worry about dying. Li Zhirong's name haunted him. Back to Zeon, we watch his knocked-out state after falling from the portal. Gathering himself, he rises up, pondering why this area feels so hot. After swiftly taking notice of the surrounding ash, he curses his destiny, since you see, this little hellscape lead him directly into a burning, hazardous dungeon. A stone fumbles its way past to Zeon, who snatches it, before understanding that this item is boiling hot. Bro tosses it away instantly, shouting at the wretched thing. This establishes one thing, that this person is not in a dream. But the fortunate thing is, the people in Neo Soul already have the experience of prepping for a dungeon descent. Sure, his hand is charred right now, but he recognizes that this is volcanic ash. In other words, if Zeon doesn't get it out of this area soon, he'll be in severe trouble. Ripping off a piece of his jeans, he rapidly bandages his mouth, externalizing that if this dungeon has an access point, then an exit must also be around the corner. His major suspicion is at the pinnacle of the volcanic outburst, which is the highest point in this dungeon. Staying here is definite death. The volcanic ash would smother him, so with no monsters around, this is the best opportunity my guy has to go the quickest way. Armed with his confidence, he sprints at incredible speeds, presenting himself as the all-powerful Zeon, the man who never gives up in any hurdle. He did say all of that, yet my partner barely escaped an encounter with the scorching lava just today. To make things worse, the fragmented ground breaks off and sends him straight down. Zeon only survives because his arms manage to cling on, nearly getting his ass scorched by the boiling lava. Still brute forcing his way through, Bro insists that a tiny amount of lava won't scare him off. Again, he barely makes it out alive, begging for his life for another near-death experience. Instead of dread, frustration engulfs him. All his rage is centered at the bastard Manhwa, the bitch who hurled him here like dead weight. Zeon assures him that he'll kill this dude with his bare hands when he makes it out alive. But soon after, he collects himself after managing his rage. Right now, he has the conviction to survive no matter what occurs. He's a fighter who doesn't want to remain down no matter what. From his current position, he just needs 4 more jumps to cross over to the highest point, and then he'll escape certain. Instead of pondering every step, he intends to blitz forward with no lingering thoughts slowing him down. After all, my guy shares no intentions of letting his life waste in a nasty prison like this. The words, "I won't stop," become destiny-defining. And precisely when you have a shred of hope for this youngster, Godzilla's younger relative leaps out of the lava to devour him. The creature successfully snatches him into his mouth, before splashing into the bubbling hot lava once more. Interestingly, this big alligator continues on with its day like nothing occurred, but then its eyes quickly dart up towards a dangling cliff. Zeon has genuinely survived. He succeeds to reach the other side and clutches on with his powers for dear life. The good thing? This terrible encounter has taught him that he could also manage volcanic ash to some level, which helped save his life just now. He drops next to the monster's snout, nearly fainting out from the engorging, tremendous heat. The dungeon is just too harsh. Just the solo environment here is worse than the living monsters Bro has to cope with. With the current circumstance, my husband can just sense his nose burning from the inside, causing him problems just having to breathe. His consciousness is fluctuating, and with flickers of light left, the notion of death enters Zeon's thoughts for heaven knows how many times. Refusing to stop and channeling the spirit of David Goggins, this man gets back up, remembering himself of his own comments from earlier. My man's motivation is that he hasn't even had a girlfriend yet, so dying here wouldn't be fair. I'm starting to think he's Denji's cousin from Chainsaw Man, and by the way, that ending for part 2 sucked ass. Anyway, Zeon controls the volcanic ash, apologizing to his uncle in advance for what he's about to do next. The enormous creature erupts from the lava for its second onslaught. Our boy retaliates to the best of his abilities to survive. Out of nowhere, a voice graces him, praising his unique gift. Zeon is surprised by the individual, yet the same voice professes tremendous interest in his sand manipulation skill. Here, an ancient guy descends to save his life, falling from the skies as a blessing provided from heaven. The old geezer grabs his sword right before his plummet, shocking Zeon. This man torpedoes down at immense speeds, to the point he smashes down with a heavy impact on the monster's flesh. That single attack sends shockwaves and affects the very path of the lava, whirling debris in every direction and leading Zeon to nearly get annihilated from the impact. Our boy is trembling from the simple force of the impact, literally forcing his eardrums to shatter while knocking his senses out. Glancing forward to see the old guy, as well as the situation of the monster, Zeon discovers that the thing has been chopped in half. This foreign mood is utterly different to him. The man standing before him isn't some ordinary strong awakener. This dude is categorically on a different league, like he's the Gojo of this universe. The guy leisurely takes another stride. Each step crashes before him. Zeon is completely lost, just witnessing his magnificence, while the awakener asks for the kid's name. Since the youngster refuses to speak, he chooses to create a dilemma for him, claiming that if he doesn't count to 3, horrible things will happen. The countdown starts with the old man gearing up in readiness, and the moment it reaches 1, he's already looming over the youngster, like a ghost from hell. In the end, he doesn't do anything to Zeon, questioning why the boy appears geeked out. In truth, our guy can barely hear this man's voice, because to his eardrums getting assaulted. The list of injuries he has are stacked up, but the old man doesn't understand this part. The awakener raises his blade, calculating that he should simply chop this youngster down if he refuses to talk. The youngster regains his hearing and panics, affirming that he doesn't know what's going on, pleading for compassion. This is good news to the awakener, who's delighted to know the kid isn't a lost cause. He reiterates and asks for the boy's name, who exclaims that it's Zeon. This guy is so amusing, he judges our boy for having such a terrible name, making Zeon question what type of name this dude even has to behave that nasty. At that moment, an elderly, powerful geezer obliterates a boulder, expressing that he's Diadin, and though he introduced his name, our boy has no notion what the heck this old man is doing right now. The awakener is bewildered and asks the youngster to clarify, so Zeon roars that he's being called a moron and threatened for no reason, and though he feels grateful for having his life saved, He still doesn't comprehend why he deserves the severe treatment. Calling him dumbass another time, Diadin adds that the child has been caught in some kind of trap. Ignoring the disrespect, Zeon asks for the facts, and discovers that a snare is essentially a phenomena that occurs when the dungeon's mana is oversaturated. In order to make sure it doesn't collapse, the dungeon helps develop another entrance point, bleeding away mana from that gap. In other words, it also draws neighboring living creatures in the same manner. That is what a snare is. Diadin underlines that most people never get the chance to feel what it's like, thus the boy's luck had to be the worst of the worst, adding additional fuel to the flame that Zeon should murder Manhwa's bitch-ass. The Awakener calls him a dumbass once more, much to the boy's displeasure. Squiggling his face, he displays exactly why the youngster is foolish, forcing him to focus his mana into his eyes. Zeon doesn't comprehend what he means until he really does that, compressing his mana into his eyes. The goal is to use mana to see, allowing the youngster see through things that he's never seen before. He's afraid of what lies ahead, but Diadin is delighted that the boy can now understand what he's dealing with. The magic beast he saw is a creature with stealth skills, making light work of its prey before they even know what hit them. Much like our boy was about to get consumed. The identical thing was in front of him this entire time, and yet Zeon could not detect even a sign of danger. By the way, earlier when he cut down the boulder, Diadin was actually cutting down this second monster, for without the old man's help, our boy would have died without even knowing what hit him. That makes it twice the number of times this man has saved his life, asking the question of exactly how powerful he is. In an effort to alleviate his curiosity, the child anxiously pleads for Diadin's real identity, who calls him idiot again, lecturing him that he's simply good old Diadin. Zeon shouts at the overwhelmed old geezer, questioning how he is this strong. When he questions where they even are, Diadin tells him that they are within a dungeon. The elderly man nonchalantly calls the scorching region his hunting ground, and urges the child to pay close attention, since he is about to reveal what he can accomplish. The tired-out-looking man then pulls out his sword and cries out, "Crayon." The moment he does, shockwaves erupt over the region, prompting Zeon to hide his ears. At first, Zeon has no idea what is going on, but when he glances about, he sees the dungeon is actually crammed with flame bird-like monsters swarming everywhere. Diadin seems excited at the sight of the struggle and tells our boy that he is on his own now and should figure out how to survive. Zeon gets put into a life-or-death position and starts cursing the old guy. He looks around, trying to think of anything he can do, but it becomes evident that he is completely surrounded and has nowhere to go. The monsters move far too rapidly for him to track correctly or even dodge in time. They keep landing little attacks on him while pulling off his garments piece by bit. Zeon cannot even discover a means to escape, and he starts wondering why the creatures are targeting only his left side again and again. He glances up and urgently tries to shoot sand at the flying animals, but they easily escape his attacks and retaliate with repeated hits of their own. Our boy feels absolutely useless compared to the old geezer. He tries to shield his gorgeous face by raising his arms as attacks keep coming at him from every aspect. Zeon recognizes that he is going to die soon if he keeps messing around without doing anything. He feels sad, thinking that he might die even after being spared twice by the old man. At that point, he recalls the scene when the old-timer materialized in front of him once again and shouted out to him. Zeon attempts to hear what Diadin is saying, but his ears are ringing badly and he cannot listen properly. He recalls how the elderly guy instructed him to see via mana instead of relying on his eyes. Even while considering himself a miserable loser, he refuses to give up and start hunting for a technique to sense foes that his vision cannot track. He carefully gathers mana into his eyes and works on improving its purity step by step. He focuses hard and attempts to feel the flow of mana, just like the old man instructed. And this time, it finally works as he begins to sense the magic power inside the monsters. Now he can monitor them, and the moment their mana comes into range, he hits at the closest spot possible, eventually bringing down the two lava birds that were targeting him. Meanwhile, the old geezer is busy fighting far larger beasts, and looks like he is enjoying every second of it. He remarks that he cannot even remember the last time he felt this revved up during a battle. He then charges forward and lands a strong blow, breaking a large crocodile-like monster clean into two parts. Just as the old geezer finishes down the thing, he says that it is a shame the monster was not even a proper match for him. He sounded upset, since he did not obtain the adrenaline he was expecting from the fight. He then sighs and observes how the number of dungeons has reduced a lot compared to the time when he was younger. Meanwhile, after watching the big evil crocodile fall so simply, Zeon cannot help but feel a bit sorry for it. He strains to comprehend how carelessly the old man murdered it, as if it was nothing more than a little lizard. At the same time, he himself is reaching his limit, and even lets out a bored giggle at his own circumstance. Suddenly, a tremendous shockwave hits him, sending him down to his knees as he throws up from the force. He barely manages to stand again, and asks Deoden what just happened. Deoden calmly explains that the shockwave he just felt was actually the roar of the dungeon master. He goes on to claim that every dungeon has a final monster waiting at the finish, and the one in this dungeon is the real reason he came all the way here. Just then, a gigantic drake drops from above, and the old-timer identifies it as a red drake. Hearing the phrase drake, Zeon swiftly wonders whether that means it is a dragon, but Deoden promptly rejects it. The old man even notes that it is bad he has to cope with a B-ranked creature instead than battling a real dragon. Even yet, this drake is definitely deadly as it is surrounded by a formidable force field. Zeon recalls hearing that B-ranked and higher monsters possess unique qualities similar to humans. Based on the Awakener rating system, a red force field denotes a close combat type, but when he realizes the aura around this drake is blue, he cries out that it means the monster is a magic type. Before they can respond further, the drake releases a black flame assault directly at them. Zeon is stuck in shock, unable to even close his mouth, and in dread he loses control totally. At the same time, the old geezer lunges right toward the source of the strike, and brings down his enormous sword directly onto the drake's skull. The drake rapidly recovers, and swings back at the old-timer with its claws. Deoden moves to parry the strike with Crayon, but in an unexpected turn, the geezer ends up ensnared within the drake's grip. The creature swiftly takes advantage of this opening, and prepares to unleash a fire breath at close range. However, Deoden reacts in time, and firmly shuts the drake's mouth, trapping the flames. He asks the monster if it can feel the pain, and then tells it not to worry since he is about to finish it for good. Tightening his grip on his sword, Deoden rushes forward, and engages the drake once again, swearing that this will be the last day it stays alive. Meanwhile, Zeon is running for his life. He finds himself entangled in the thick of this tremendous struggle where he cannot even stand still to protect himself effectively. He swiftly utilizes his power and constructs a sand wall behind him in an attempt to prevent the impending shockwaves. He shouts at the two of them to take their fight somewhere else while wondering how simple shockwaves can inflict this much damage to him. On the opposite side, the old-timer is plainly enjoying himself. He yells that this is just like being at an amusement park. Just then, another shockwave rushes at Zeon, and this time it arrives too suddenly for him to respond. He thinks he is done for and gets tossed far away by the hit. He lands in a violent fashion and ends up being pushed toward the magma, leaving the poor lad frozen as he understands he is about to die as a miserable failure who couldn't even find himself a girl. The story then changes to the old fart, who clearly does not care at all about what happens to our boy. Instead, he keeps tormenting the drake and declares it a disgrace to all boss monsters for battling so miserably. Pushed over the brink by the non-stop taunts, the drake charges up another breath assault. Seeing that, Deoden smiles because he did not anticipate the weakling to have something this entertaining concealed up its sleeve. The concentrated magic breath tears through the air, obliterating practically everything in its path and getting larger the farther it travels. After a while, the crimson drake eventually pauses, confident the maniac must have been turned into dust by now. But the moment it hears his voice inquiring if it is seeking for someone, the unfortunate thing realizes it is hopelessly screwed. It lets out a pained yell and turns around, just to discover him calmly squatting on its body. His blade is buried a full meter deep inside it, and he calmly admits that he has been seeking for one of its sort for a long time. After all, he needs a crimson drake heart for his crayon to grow. It is unfortunate, but the beast has no choice but to die for that purpose. With that, he drives the sword more deeper, letting power pour into its body. The enormous creature thrashes furiously in anguish as the blade pierces clean through it. After absorbing the drake's heart, Crayon begins to shine with a bright crimson aura. He looks at his blade with delight, pleased that it has breached its limitations once again. Right then, his bizarre little bonding time with the sword was interrupted by our boy, who questions why the heck he is talking to his weapon like a crazy. The dude might be nuts, but he is also unbelievably strong, since he just soloed a crimson drake. Meanwhile, Deoden is amazed that the tiny twerp is still alive. Our boy let him know that he was screwed, and he crawled back from the edge of death. When the ground fell beneath him, and he was thrown down, he did not merely sit there expecting to die. Instead, he used his sand manipulation to create a cushion that eased the fall. That rescued him from turning into human ketchup. Even he cannot believe how skilled he has grown at cheating death every time things go. He adds that repeatedly getting banged around by the shockwaves of a certain madman has refined his reflexes a lot. Deoden is moderately impressed by that, but just now, there is something considerably more essential to deal with. The old man suddenly grabs him by the shirt like he is managing a naive kid, telling him the dungeon is falling now that the boss is dead. They need to get out immediately, but our boy is bewildered about what that has to do with his getting picked up like groceries. The elderly fart breaks out laughing like he'd just heard the funniest joke of his life. Not because it was truly amusing, but because of what comes next. Without notice, he yeets our boy into a little black opening that opens in front of them, and nonchalantly yells, "See you." Mid-flight, our boy lashes off every slur he knows and calls him worse than that bastard Park Manho. A second later, he gets spat out on the other side as the black hole cracks up and ragdolls him across the sand a few times. Spitting sand out of his mouth and thoroughly dazed, he wonders where the hell he ended up now. Diadem gently states that they are on the surface. When a dungeon boss is defeated, cracks to the outside open up as exits. Hearing that, he instantly starts protesting that they could have just walked out instead of been dumped like trash. The old man finally loses his patience and makes one thing clear. He concedes that the kid's sand powers are actually rather beneficial, but in his current form, he is more useless than a blunt knife. Because of that, he provides him two choices. He can move south to New Soul City and keep living as the same dirt-tier nobody he has always been. Or, he can pick the enjoyable road. Under his supervision, he will go from a clueless moron to a stronger and quicker moron. Xion is caught off by that and questions what exactly he means by following him, and more importantly, how long it would even take. The elderly warrior plainly tells him he has no idea. It could take months, years, or even decades. Even he can't anticipate the future. Faced with an option that could totally transform his life, Xion stands there unsure what to do. The old man sums it up in the most ruthless way possible. He can go back to his usual monotonous life. Or he can take a course where he literally speed rushes life with a 99% probability of dying. The boy starts laughing like a lunatic and queries if the old-timer has fully lost his head. Xion then goes on to fake out how he has got a luxurious palace to return to, along with a comfortable bed, and asks if the old man seriously expects him to give all of that up just to follow a smelly old geezer through burning deserts with no certainty, especially when the old man could drop dead any moment because of his age. The old-timer responds with a nod, making it plain that this is exactly what he expects Xion to accomplish. Our boy puts on an act and gives out a deep sigh, expressing how terrible the decision is, yet he still agrees to join him. He then constructs a compelling story, saying that any time someone upsets him, he has to settle matters on the spot, but acknowledges that he is currently too weak to exact his retribution. He goes on to state that the old man is also on that revenge list, then praises how strong he is compared to anyone he has ever met before. Xion says that he doubts he will ever come across someone stronger than him again. As he starts talking about how confident and optimistic he feels, the old-timer interrupts him off and mocks him, asking if that means he is confident about dying early. Xion denies it and clenches his fist, claiming that he will become stronger than everyone else. The old geezer says that with that kind of mentality, he is just heading for an early ticket to the grave, then tells him to keep following. He continues calling him a dumbass while stressing that they still have a long way to go. As the story continues along after some time, Xion is drenched in perspiration and barely manages to keep up with the old man's speed. He cries out to him, encouraging him to slow down and take a rest, as they have already been walking for 6 hours. He keeps shouting, but the old-timer simply ignores him and continues walking in quiet. Xion shouts at himself, saying he is not some temperamental teenager, and asks why he is coping with all these abrupt mood swings. The heat around him is oppressive, and he starts thinking about just how high the temperature must be. On top of that, the loose sand makes every step difficult, and he begins to worry that he might collapse from heat stroke at this rate. Just when he is about to give up, the old-timer finally turns his attention toward him, as if he had been waiting for this very moment. He labels him an idiot who cannot even make use of a small part of his own power. When Xion looks bewildered, the geezer reminds him that he is a sand manipulation user, yet he is struggling to simply walk correctly on sand. When Xion tries to excuse himself by saying that he only awakened a few days ago and is still in F class, Dioden immediately gets upset. He instructs the student to quit talking rubbish, making it plain that he does not care about his class. He then asks him, asking whether he genuinely believes that others are born as S-class, while he alone is the only one stuck at a disadvantage. The old-timer grabs the lad by his collar and asks him if he is planning to give up, simply because he thinks he was not blessed. He keeps shouting until he loses his passion and drops the youngster back down into the sand, urging him to discover out how to use his skill on his own. Dioden encourages him to use his intelligence and comprehend his own power, since he should know it best if he wants to go past his limits and become stronger. Just when Zeon starts thinking that the elderly man might actually be somewhat sensible, Diadon abruptly starts ranting again and threatens that he will be dead if he cannot figure it out. Zeon starts over again and concentrates on his ability. What he understands is that the range of sand he can control is only approximately 5 meters. He then studies the issue and finds the sand is only ankle deep, and if he can somehow make it as solid as a floor, he might be able to save more energy while traveling. Our boy strives to compress the sand and make it solid, and he finally succeeds. Walking in the sweltering desert suddenly feels like a breeze for him. However, he soon learns just how much mana is being drained from him, and he understands that he may not be able to keep this up for long. Zeon then changes to plan B and tries concentrating mana into his legs instead. This also works amazingly well. Seeing him full of enthusiasm and trying again and again, the old-timer silently smiles, remembering his own days when he was also an eager youngster. Even though Zeon keeps insisting that he is simply an F-class, Diadon maintains sure that his control over mana and his potential should be at least level E or D. The old man sees clear potential in the child. Just then, Zeon discovers something new and starts making a fuss over it. He runs up to the old-timer while saying that he is merely managing the sand hitting his feet and that walking has gotten a lot easier now. As he starts becoming smug and even shows the elderly man his middle finger while demanding him to do the same, the old-timer punches him on the head. He instructs the child to avoid wasting time on pointless things unless he wants to drop dead. Zeon goes down immediately and loses consciousness. By the time he wakes up, he finds his grimy face pushed against the sandy floor in the dark. Munching on some beef jerky, the geezer says he is delighted the kid finally woke up. It was a great pain lugging him all the way here. As our boy struggles to sit up and complains that his whole body is destroyed with injuries, the old fart tosses him a wad of jerky. Then, he tells the boy to carefully listen to a story from his younger days. According to him, those were the good times, back when being weak would not get you killed. In reality, defending the helpless was considered the noble duty of those with authority. But that world is long gone today, and he clearly misses it. Storytime ends swiftly, and the guru geezer advises him to get up already if he isn't a fan of dying. Our protagonist calmly listens to his teacher instead of talking back. To his amazement, the old man throws him another piece of jerky. The narrative from long ago makes him realize that the geezer actually has a lot of insight. Diadon seems like a dried-up relic, but he holds decades or maybe even centuries of experience. While watching him eat, he finds something interesting. Even with those ancient worn-out teeth, the old man had no issue chewing the jerky. Just by observing, he finds out the trick. Instead of chewing it straight, you soften it with saliva first before biting into it. It is the correct way to consume jerky in an arid, dry desert like this. It feels that the old man is not simply feeding him, but progressively teaching him how to exist on his own, like training a man how to fish instead of providing him food. After that, the two head out again beneath the cover of the night sky. Along the way, he keeps asking his teacher for another piece of jerky, but the old fart orders him to zip it. Sometime later, the cold starts striking him severely. He begins sneezing constantly, his whole body shaking like a vibrating machine in the frigid desert night. Meanwhile, the old man spreads out like he is sunbathing on some beach in Hawaii, fully undisturbed. At the same time, he still cannot wrap his head around why this crazy talks to his sword all the time. Then thirst comes in, and he asks for some water. But Diadon ignores him entirely and swallows every last drop for himself. Watching that greatly annoys him off, especially because the greedy guru does not even try sharing. Even then, he recognizes he does not have enough garments on him. Unlike the old guy, he cannot wring out dew from loose cloth to drink. Still, he crouches down and starts licking the little drips of dew off his own body. Like a frantic stray puppy, he will try anything to reach his master's level. Seeing it, the old guy calls him a dotard, but he maintains he is not a dotard, he is a proud moron. Ignoring his gibberish, the old guy instructs him to quiet talking and focus on perceiving his environment. Clueless as usual, he quiets down and tries to listen. After a while, he begins to pick up mild vibrations all about him. Slowly, he learns they are coming from different directions. Before he can even blink, he sees hundreds of bright eyes surrounding them. They are savage monsters, ready to tear up everything they can get their jaws on. Horned hyenas are generally active at night, but unluckily, they got caught out around daybreak. As the animals bare their fangs and prepare to shred him to pieces, the old guy asks if he's got this, or if he needs daddy's help. It seems the craziness rubbed off on him too, because he chuckles and answers he does not need any help from a dusty old man. Manipulating the sand around him, he prepares for a fight to the death with the stray animals. First, he makes a sand bullet and fires it directly through one of the hyenas. Then he builds gigantic spikes of hardened sand, creating a deadly zone that kills everything entering his range. But as the conflict carries on, tiredness starts catching up to him. He yells in desperation, feeling that he is stuck in some unending zombies mode, and caught. Pain rips through his chest and he nearly collapses, realizing he might die from mana exhaustion before the animals ever finish him off. That makes one thing apparent. Raw power alone is not enough. He needs a smarter way to fight. Summoning another sand bullet in his fingers, he starts thinking seriously about how to spend his energy more efficiently. But his reasoning gets cut short when a hyena leaps in and sinks its teeth deep into his arm. Somehow he manages to shake it off, but the damage is terrible. His arm is torn up with holes like a SpongeBob. Even then, the injury produces a eureka moment. Those holes teach him the most efficient method to employ his sand manipulation. He stands there, patiently calculating his next move, while the pack charges at him, hungry and ready to tear him apart. Right before they reach him, he releases his amazing new tactic. Hundreds of extremely thin but sharp sand spikes spring from the earth at once. They slice through every single beast and turn the entire group into skewered hyena kebabs. The villain bursts into laughing just like his lord. Watching his adversaries drop from a single clean attack seems far more fulfilling than blowing their skulls apart. Wasting mana in a combat is the fastest way to speedrun death. Meanwhile, his exquisite spike traps that punch clean holes through targets represent peak efficiency. Compared to him, the old geezer fights significantly slower, taking enemies head-on, one by one. The hyenas grip onto his arms and bite in, however the lunatic only laughs like they are tickling him. After having his fun, a fierce glint appears in his eyes as he finally goes serious. The moment Zeon sees that crazed expression, he immediately understands what is coming. He braces himself, already dreading dealing with this chaos again. With a cruel grin, the old guy tells Crayon to slaughter his adversaries. In a heartbeat, explosive power emerges and sends shockwaves that blast away sand and monsters alike. Our boy barely manages to shelter himself with a wall of sand, while the hyenas are thrown like cannonballs into the distance. When everything eventually settles, he just stands there in disbelief. The core of the detonation and the trail of destruction flowing ahead leave him absolutely dumbfounded. That makes him question if Diadin is really human, because no normal person could pull that off without employing some kind of expertise. At the same time, he recognizes that growing arrogant around a monster like this is a fast way to die. Meanwhile, Diadin starts coughing violently, choking on the dust he kicked up himself. Taking advantage of that moment, the alpha of the horned hyenas leaps in and pierces him with its lightning-charged horn. Caught off guard, the old man looks down in mild astonishment, wondering why the beast had some type of magic field surrounding it. He certainly misjudged it, considering this one is at least B rank. Seeing him in a life-threatening scenario, Zeon panics and shouts for him to watch out. Turns out the anxiety was absolutely useless. Diadin nonchalantly grabs the hyena's horn like it belongs to him, not reacting to the crackling electricity flowing through it. Our protagonist hits an error 404 screen, unable to grasp what kind of quantum physics he is viewing. Even the alpha gets weirded out and backs away when she sees the old freak loving her lightning like it is massaging his weary muscles. After his massage, he lets the poor sap know it's the end of the line. He jumps onto the alpha and slams his sword deep into her body, spewing blood all across the battlefield. Watching it, Zeon understands he was a fool, continuously caring about this man. After the combat, the two begin extracting beneficial resources from the horned hyenas. Wearing the alpha's hide, our boy asks Diadin when they are finally leaving. He is startled to see the old man even removing the horns, stating they are valuable resources for building lightning-based weaponry. Out of nowhere, the old guy tosses him a dagger, offering him a weapon to hunt with. He makes it obvious that from now on, the kid has to find his own meals. No more freebies. Since horned hyena meat is mostly deadly, one wrong bite would kill him. Only the muscle from the flank is safe to eat. As Diadin nonchalantly slices out meat himself, he finds the boy merely looking and shouts at him to quit gawking. If he wants to survive, he must get going and acquire his own food before sunrise. With that, our boy starts gathering meat on his own till the sun finally rises. He already looks more experienced compared to before. Even though he still lacks a proper water source, he has enough meat stowed in his backpack. On top of that, his sand-walking expertise makes it a snap to move during the day. Getting a touch boastful, he insults the old man, wondering whether he is straining to walk and feeling envy of his neat little skill. This time, he genuinely dodges the man's punch and sticks his tongue out like an unpleasant brat. But the second strike delivered with crayon strikes some sense into his skull. While he spits out sand, Diadon plainly tells him that his back hurts like hell, and a cheap walking trick does not make him remarkable. Zeon sulks that he was simply playing around. He was already thirsty, and now his mouth is filled with dry sand. Then he notices something is odd. His mouth is not exactly that dry anymore. The air feels a little wet. For a second, he wonders if he is hallucinating, but the look on Diadon's face confirms it is real. On the other side of the sand dune in front of them is something every desert wanderer dreams of finding: a desert oasis. Walking up the dune, Zeon starts shouting with joy as he finally gets to view a lake in real life. He ignores all safeguards and slips down the dunes, longing for that delicious hydrating water. The old geezer clicks his tongue in disappointment, but does not stop him. Our hero runs directly to the edge and dunks his head into the water, letting his parched skin take in the much-needed moisture. He shuts his eyes and lets his mind wander away. Ever since landing here, he has been caught in the blazing heat of the desert, and today is the first time he allows his body to calm down. He immediately snaps out of his thoughts as he discovers a bright light deep inside, in the depths of the lake. Zeon begins to feel tired as he keeps staring at it, eventually running out of oxygen. All of a sudden, Diadon yells out his name and sprints down the slope at full speed. However, our hero remained paralyzed, unconscious that a giant sea monster is steadily approaching him. At the last time, the old guy manages to pull him out, just before he gets transformed into fish feed. Throwing Zeon onto the ground, Diadon rises up in the air and faces the fish monster head-on. With one clean swing of his sword, he knocks down the enormous beast swiftly. Meanwhile, our boy watches everything happen, but is distracted by the rainbow forming over the oasis. The old geezer brings the enormous fish out of the water and tells that it is a sand angler. The fish utilizes the light on its head to hypnotize animals before devouring them. His gaze suddenly goes serious, and he smacks the absolute disobedience out of our boy. The old man then starts criticizing him for forgetting what he was taught and becoming too irresponsible. Diadon continues, claiming that irresponsible fools like him are always the first to perish in the harsh, unforgiving climate of the desert. Zeon can only murmur yes in response, and the old guy lets out a sigh. Seeing that his student is listening for once, he ditches the topic and instead urges him to start skinning the creature. The sand angler is a C-rank magic beast, and its belly skin is the best material for crafting a robe. Our boy gets puzzled and asks if the old geezer truly needs a robe, which nearly makes him lose it. Having reached his limit for idiocy for the day, he starts roasting the child and declares him dumber than a brainless starfish. Our hero humorously starts bleeding out of his ears again and hurriedly apologizes with a nervous smile. The old guy continues, adding that even though the fish has altered a lot, it still resembles the species that formerly thrived on Earth. He tells Zeon to look at it attentively, since this is his first time seeing a real fish. Our boy arrives to the conclusion that fish are truly terrifying, and then gets to skinning. Seeing how terribly he is managing it, Diadon advises him to stop treating the fish like he is giving it a massage to his granny. Our hero advises him to mind his own business, but then concentrates back on the task. He recognizes that the skin is too tough to cut with a standard knife. Zeon then channels mana into his blade, honing it so it can cut through the skin easily. He takes the knife to scrape off the scales and transforms them into little needles. For the thread, he decides to use the tendons that connect the meat to the bones. Even with all his Oscar-worthy ideas, the ultimate outcome comes as a complete mess of a robe. Lounging against the dead fish, the elderly guy roasts him for squandering such a wonderful catch on something so useless. But our guy does not stop there, and intends to attempt again, as he has plenty of stuff remaining. A few hours later, he finally succeeds and holds up a finished robe that actually looks great. Zeon gets a little carried away and claims he could definitely sell these for profit and possibly create his own tailor shop. The old man calls his name, which makes him respond rapidly as he shouts that he is not turning over the robe. However, Dio-den instead urges him to stop messing around, while holding out a big sack-like organ that is still pouring blood. He encourages our boy to start eating this gallbladder, since it is a highly uncommon and potent remedy. Zeon tries to argue, but the elderly man affirms his worry that he would be killed if he refuses. He then drops the hefty organ into our boy's hands, while lamenting that his arms are tired. Looking at the horrible pile in front of him, our hero hesitates for a while, but then starts eating like a famished man. Even though it tastes more bitter than orange juice after toothbrush, he keeps slurping it down, not wanting to get beaten to death. Strangely, after a few bites he feels like his appetite is still not fulfilled, and continues eating more and more. Just as he finishes it, the old guy reminds him that now it is time for him to burn. That catches Zeon off surprise, as he wonders what the old geezer is talking about. Right after that, He feels his throat constrict as he starts choking. On the inside, it feels like a Chernobyl reactor is going off. His whole body goes out of control as the tremendous heat spreads everywhere. He begins screaming in agonizing pain while the old man orders him to quit acting like a child. He then starts monologuing, claiming that everything in life is like this oasis, that everything will disappear as if it never existed. He explains that the sand anglers are reincarnated, keeping the cycle balanced. Before he can continue, our boy cuts him off and instructs him to stop with the soppy emotional stories and help him. Even while witnessing the kid writhe on the ground like an earthworm after it encounters salt, he does nothing and simply goes to sleep. The next day, Zeon eventually opens his eyes and sees the old guy peering down at him with an ugly smile. That nearly scares the soul of his body, and he shouts at the elderly man for nearly giving him a heart attack. They exchange a few more lovely words until the old man asks how he feels now. Our boy suddenly discovers that something in his body has changed. He feels considerably lighter. His muscles feel stronger, and the mana inside him feels near to overflowing. Testing his new and increased powers, he asks what occurred since it feels like he has taken some super soldier serum. The old man says that it is due of the fish's gallbladder. He adds that the organ functions as a cheat item for surviving the desert, making a person more stronger, which makes our boy feel unhappy because he was allowed to use it. Dioden brushes it off, stating he only did it because the kid was too weak, and he did not want to slow down because of him. Zeon protests that he is useful at times, but the elderly man orders him to be quiet and start eating, since they are not leaving until the fish is entirely finished. 4 days later, they eventually manage to reduce the sand angler down to nothing but clean bones. The old man then says it is time to move again. Zeon smiles and puts on his new cloak as they continue their trek. A few days later, powerful dusty gusts sweeps toward them, marking the onset of a sandstorm. Thanks to his increased strength, our boy is not impacted much, and is shocked that the elderly man has the stamina to keep running without slowing down. Dioden has not spoken for days, which makes Zeon worry whether the old man is going through some type of male menopause. They have been trekking for 2 weeks now, which makes him worry whether the old man even knows where they are headed. Just then, a large ant monster comes behind Zeon, but he immediately reacts with a sand beam assault. He wonders how much farther they have to go, but then notices that the ant monster is still alive. That draws his attention as he confesses the creature is tougher than expected. He had planned to pass through without incident, but things do not go his way. Using his sand skills, he senses more ants approaching and resolves to face them immediately. Driving his palm into the sand, he forces the ants to rise up to the surface as they begin to surround him. Slightly bored out of his mind with wiping off swathes of ants, Zeon began blasting them with sand. His technique has definitely improved in a short length of time. Come to think of it, days with sandstorms were actually pretty fantastic for his abilities. There was a seemingly unlimited quantity of ammunition everywhere he looked. The geezer's pace was punishing though. He never slowed down while leaving the moron to take care of the trailing annoyance. Zeon lamented about the lack of a single shred of loyalty. No wonder the geezer was still alone in his elderly age. While he was concerned whether Dioden could hear his trash talk, Zeon picked up something troublesome within his 10-meter radius detecting range. He was always on alert, never dropping his guard. It allowed him to react instantaneously whenever a magic beast emerged, but this time was different. What he sensed at this moment sent a thrill down his spine. What he detected wasn't just a beast, it was dread incarnate. What followed was a stampede of innumerable ants shooting out of the ground. The army of pests came out of nowhere. He resorted to the old man for some aid, conceding that he was out of his depth. But Dioden just looked at him and plopped his old ass down to watch. If he had popcorn, he would have been snacking. Zeon understood that no help was coming. Besides, he can't keep sobbing to the geezer when things go bad forever. There was no way that old fart didn't sense what was coming. This was a quest, a test of sorts. Whether there are 1,000 or 10,000 of these animals, bugs are just bugs. So he built a sphere of rolling sand and trapped the entire army. Everything was a battle to keep everything together, made considerably harder when another batch cropped up to stop his flow. Zeon's confidence collapsed as he was hauled away like a bag of rubbish. He resorted to challenging the ants to battle him one-on-one like a man, instead of ganging up. His provocation was fruitless. They proceeded to swarm him like he was the finest treat in the desert. Fortunately, he discovered an opening to solidify some sand beneath his feet, using it as a platform for flying. Even with greater verticality, the ants found a method to approach him by erecting a damn anthill. He urgently soared up to higher ground for a better view of the situation. Zeon assumed he would be safe up there, but he was gravely incorrect. Who would have believed that big ants could construct an even more colossal anthill by joining themselves together. He nearly shat himself as his sand flyer was stopped in its tracks. The wailing the bugs produced was frightening as they grabbed onto Zeon's foot like their lives depended on it. He was helplessly yanked along by his ankle and smacked into the sand without mercy. It took Zeon a minute to get back up, panting and struggling for air as he puked blood. When he looked up, the old man was still staring with an uninterested look. That apathy gave him enough gas to keep going. He wanted to prove that he could endure this torture. For the first time since the fight started, Deoden showed some good reaction. He appreciated the kid's spirit, even though he's still a moron. In a world turned to garbage with nothing but sand, Zeon's skill is nothing short of a blessing. After all, he could have harnessed and polished that power to live a life of luxury. But that would have been the end of it, a superficial existence. Those narrow-minded idiots are fascinated with illusions. They don't even know why the world became like way in the first place. An awakened is designed to master, utilize, and evolve their own skills to the maximum limit. This ability is not meant for some factory-made cookie-cutter soldier. Deoden might be one of the very few who still remember. Most have forgotten about the tragedy that shook the very foundations of the globe 100 years ago. Back then, Deoden was useless beyond help. He had lost count of how many individuals died in vain right before his eyes. His co-workers, neighbors, and even his family became victims of the calamity. What hurt the most was the loss of his daughter. He had never felt so powerless. He lost everyone essential to him while he froze like a dumb fucking idiot. This boy, Zeon, is different. He never faltered, even when the odds were unfairly heaped against him. He might have the ability to become anything he'd want to be as long as he's foolish enough to throw himself into the conflict, crossing the line between life and death. From tiptoeing that line, one will certainly grow at an incredible pace. Looking like he had lost any sense of sanity, Zeon smiled at the face of the ant army. In the middle of the conflict, he devised a skill that created an ultra-high-pressure compressed sand projectile. It was a simple and rudimentary device, but its destructiveness was the real deal. Each missile he launched was packed with compressed gravity, wind, and every bit of energy he could employ. It was more than the sum of its parts, a harmonious synergy that raises the power tenfold. The ants failed to kill him before he evolved, so it's their turn to get massacred. Deoden chuckled at the punk, who was getting all enthusiastic with his little idea. By the time Zeon was done bombing the bugs, the surrounding ground had been substantially altered, cratered in many areas. He was really happy with himself. This was a cause for rejoicing. Zeon was so thrilled to brag about his W to the old geezer that he did not detect the threat approaching from his flank. The biggest ant in the colony had surfaced and taken a hold of him with a firm mandible hold. It crept up on him without making a single sound. There was no chance these vermin had the capacity to use a high-level stealth talent. The strange feeling he sensed inside his body made his dilemma make sense. He was poisoned. He's been progressively losing control of his mana. The poison must be preventing his newly established mana points. Restricted and impotent, all he could do was bark curses. The big ant was immune to his nasty words. He was just another prey that must be hunted. When Zeon regained consciousness, he found himself deep in an underground tunnel, surrounded by his sworn foes. It was an ant nest. Upon detecting that food had come, the colony's larvae skittered towards the paralyzed human. Their ear-piercing screech and alien visage were off-putting to say the least. Once they were convinced that he was not a threat, larvae swarmed all over his body, hoping to get a taste of his delicious flesh. These suckers were strong enough to puncture through flesh and bite through anything beneath. Despite being the main dish on the nasty feast, Zeon couldn't move a muscle. At this rate, he'll be devoured alive. Slowly, as his vision deteriorated, he saw his life flashing before his eyes. What he watched on that gloomy stroll down memory lane stirred something deep within. Zeon regained part of his willpower to battle through the poison and smash one of the parasites, trying to feed on his meat. Seeing the larva food move alerted the ants monitoring the feast. He chuckled at himself for daring to close his eyes like a coward in the first place. Life is so unfair. The flashback of his entire life didn't show a single positive recollection. How could he accept dying like such a loser chud? The near-death experience must have pushed him above his limitations and exacerbated the markings on his forearm. Accessing the sand beneath his feet, he one-shotted every ugly larva in his vicinity with a spiky explosion. The ant army panicked. Their hostage was meant to be free food. But suddenly, Zeon is back up on his own 2 feet, with dozens of compressed missiles floating all over him. He looked down at his forearm and found his rank had increased. The rank rise came with poison cleansing, stamina regeneration, and an overall increase in his overflowing mana capacity. The second sandy line on his target was the conclusion of his non-stop hard work over the past few days with the geezer. From raw power to manacap, everything was on a whole different level compared to his F-rank capabilities. And yet, he had all the sand missiles at his disposal. Still couldn't land a single scratch on the ant queen. The enormous bug reacted, attacking him with her many fast-moving limbs. That basic yet efficient punch broke through rock and pulverized it into sand. Zeon continued his sandy assault, but the queen's shell was just unbreakable. At this point, he would take even just a slight dent in that black exoskeleton. The queen's defense was ridiculous. After a few more futile trials, he accepted that sand missiles were not going to cut it, no matter how compacted and destructive they were. In such scenario, he'll just have to reconsider his whole strategy. There must be a way to break an unbreakable armor. Smashing and piercing were out of contention. Maybe he could try to peel the tough carapace straight off. To do just that, Zeon managed every grain of sand he could control to totally blanket the queen's entire body. He saw a tight ripping motion around the hard shell in his mind, twisting and pulling the whole thing off from the flesh. It effectively made the queen screech in anguish. In revenge for his savage effort at undressing a queen, she started condensing pure mana in her mandibles. She did not battle against the rip, but instead readied a terrifying ranged response. Zeon was not the only insane bastard in this ant nest. The mana gathered produced ultra-high-frequency waves that caused his ears bleed. At this rate, his brain might just explode from the pressure. The basic contest from earlier had transformed into a battle of guts and pain endurance. Zeon thought his wild plot to strip the queen was a smart ploy. Who would have believed that the colony's leader had something up her many sleeves? Bleeding from his ears and eyelids, the boy embraced the challenge, even knowing there's a strong risk he would die. It was truly simple. Whoever dies first is the loser. This guy was a true hater. He would cheerfully die with his enemy if there was any hope of victory. The excruciating stalemate came to a close when Zeon felt his mind break. Something snapped inside his body, severing its connection with his thoughts. He might have hit his ultimate limit in there. His feeble physique could not keep up with the challenge. He's weary of being so sad and weak. The geezer must have heard his innermost thoughts while he was pulling Zeon up from the dirt. With that casual smile, Diadem scolded the fool for almost dying. Miraculously, Zeon regained the connection between his body and mind. He even joked that he'd let the geezer have the last hit. There was no need for any more interfering, though. That C-rank wolf ant queen was far stronger than Zeon. Yet he did not give up, fought until the very end, and earned the right to live by being tenacious and creative. Diadem was literally showering him with adulation for the first time since they linked up. It was a shame Zeon's eardrums were entirely ruptured. He couldn't hear a word he just uttered. Acknowledging his faulty eardrums, the old guy carried his limp body close to the corpse of the wolf ant queen. They reached a little area where a shimmering sphere had been neatly set. Zeon asked the geezer what was up, and Diadem started drawing on the walls. He stated that the spherical was the queen's egg, its medicine, strawberry-flavored too. The kid was perplexed by his wall scribblings, but it seems like he's being forced to ingest some strange item again. Just in case a repeat occurrence occurs. Zeon wondered if ingesting this stuff was going to hurt like the sand angler's gallbladder. Diadem stood forward and stated that eating the egg would most probably lead to death. But Zeon couldn't hear that on account of his terrible ear injuries. Ultimately, he chose to trust the old man's call and inched his mouth close to the sparkling egg. He's merely a street rat from Neo Seoul. He doesn't even know what strawberries taste like. But if it has the same flavor as this ant egg, then strawberries must be fucking great. Zeon humorously requested for more, but his countenance paled when he felt something peculiar upon digesting the egg. Spikes of blood protruded from all over his torso. The bleeding that suddenly quit began back up again. He was undergoing the process known as organ inversion. It basically implies twisting and turning of the intestines and adjacent body parts. Normally, the queen ant's egg is employed as a fatal toxin. Even a modest amount of the horrible stuff would forcibly invert a human's internal organs. The consumer's organs are penetrated and twisted. They were being disturbed by a prickly stick. Most people would surely die from the anguish and shock of organ inversion. As the crippling pain clouded his head, Zeon cursed at the old man for putting him through hell time and time again. Then Diadem was only attempting to boost his chances of survival in this strange world by letting him feel a level of suffering that would destroy the strongest wills. The next step of organ inversion was spewing up gallons upon gallons of blood like a leaky faucet in a horror movie. At this moment, it's a miracle that Zeon was still standing. Slowly succumbing to blood loss and slipping into shock, he started to think about the past few days of adventure. He thought he finally found someone to trust, but Diadem might just be a nasty old fart after all. Maybe he was just another moron to Gramps. Slipping and collapsing into his own pool of blood, Diadem watched and let him writhe on the ground. While the kid was convulsing down there, the elderly man rummaged through the queen ant's corpse. It did not take him long to find what he was looking for, tugging out a piece of shimmering material from the queen's lower half. He giggled. As expected, a beast's mana stone is on a whole other level than the thought things. This one was nothing short of a gold mine. Dietin believed the ant bodies useful in the future, so he kept them in some autonomous space. His previous acts earned him the ire of his sword, Crayon. He admits that he might have pushed the kid too far this time. Still, there was no other way. If he's weak, he dies. Besides, Crayon understands as much as the geezer that they don't have much time left. By sunrise, Xian proceeded to beat insurmountable odds by waking up after dozing like a blood-drained newborn. The first thing he saw was that obnoxious smile put on a wrinkly face. Instinctively, the disrespectful brat attacked his tutor. Dietin forcefully admonished him from kicking up dust while he's still being courteous. Xian was not listening. He had a considerably more lethal batch of sand missiles loaded and locked onto the geezer's position. Dietin tried to warn him against acting out, but the boy really followed through with the attack. You can't blame him either. He was moving on autopilot. Xian was acting completely under the notion that the old man tried to kill him on purpose. His sand buried Dietin deep. He was moving and speaking like a malevolent spirit with a vengeance to settle. In addition to the waves of sand, he also accessed the spiky stalactites hanging from the walls of the ant colony. He used the fine grains to hack off one of the big spikes, bringing it down on the old guy. That succession of assaults completely gassed him out. The combo was spectacular, but so was the mana and stamina cost. While he was rambling on and on about an attempt on his life, the old man simply sighed and really questioned his IQ. Sure, the queen's egg might include some poisons that could have destroyed his brain, but still, that's hardly an excuse to at least use what's left in that thick skull of his. Xian was shocked that the geezer just stood in his posture and took his complete combo without as much as a single scratch. If Dietin really wanted to murder him, he'd be dead by a single flick to the forehead. Why would someone as strong as the old guy go through the bother of poisoning a wormy bastard? The clarification was a touch insulting, but Xian had to acknowledge that it made a ton of sense. The geezer elaborated that the queen's egg is a fatal poison that twists and stabs at the consumer's organs. Survive that, and it would also clean out every toxin and impurity from every nook of your body. Depending on how it was administered, it might be a lethal poison or a heavenly remedy. After all the internal filth was removed from Xian's body, mana will swiftly fill up the empty spots where impurities used to live. He must have felt the difference when he attempted to kill Dietin for real. By the elderly man's calculation, the kid's mana must have expanded by at least 3 or 4-fold. After hearing the proper explanation, Xian profusely apologized, jumped into the geezer's arms, and justified his acts as those of someone who wasn't in the right state of mind. Dietin did not make a great out of the fuss. He was merely creeped off by being hugged by a snobby person. Thankfully, that egg also healed his injuries. His eardrums are undamaged again, and he could hear insults once again. Xian refused to let go, despite the geezer's protests. Internally, Dietin was chatting with his sword about the risk they faced in letting the kid eat the egg. In actuality, Xian was only partly faking his heartfelt apology to avoid angering his eccentric master any further. Still, the geezer thinks that the danger was worth it. If the kid doesn't develop strong fast enough, he'll be nothing but dead weight. Sometimes, wild gambles pay off, like today. Dietin snatched up Xian like he weighed nothing. It's time to move out of this dreary ant colony. He was a bit bewildered as to why the old man grabbed him again, as he was now fully capable of walking on his own. Well, because they have squandered enough time underground, there's just one easy method to resurface. When the elderly guy gestured at the spiky roof of the colony, Xian realized that he was getting wounded whether he consented or not. A few moments later, the tranquil surface of the sandy desert was interrupted by the unexpected appearance from below. Dietin was fun, taking command and going quickly. Xian was not a great fan of his wild speed though. Why can't they just travel like normal folks for once? The geezer would have been amenable to the concept of leisurely crossing the arid land if the moron had not slept for 4 consecutive days. Dietin felt horrible for whoever will marry this poor youngster in the future. The joking and mocking ceased when the geezer observed something from a distance. Xian asserted that nothing could surprise him anymore, but promptly shut his trap as soon as he followed the elderly man's line of sight. Up ahead stood a gigantic land turtle the size of a small island. The beast was approximately 30 kilometers distant from their position, but its sheer size made it quite obvious. Dietin stated that the tortoise was known as the mobile fortress, Archelon, a load of pain in the ass that never gave him a moment's quiet. The tortoise itself is classified as a B-rank magic beast, Yet its defenses considerably surpassed several A-rank monsters. After taming the beast, they adapted the shell and used it as conveyance, a mobile castle. Diodin encouraged the moron to take a hard look at the Archelon. Seeing such a sight for the first time would definitely make anyone contemplate how huge the globe truly is. There are actual monsters capable of taming and riding a beast like that out there in the wild. When the mobile fortress passed them by, both the old guy and the moron were just the size of dirt trapped between the Archelon's toes. When the tortoise stopped going ahead, someone jumped from the shell to the ground. Based on how acquainted whatever this jumper was to the geezer, it sounded like they knew each other. It had been a long time since these two old sacks of bones got together.